Welcome to Meeting of the Moms, a place to talk about all the things. I'm Lorna Adams. I'm a wife, mom, and certified life coach. I think being with people makes anything a party. Thanks for coming to ours. I'm here with my good friend Amy. For years, we've spent the early morning hours running and talking together before diving into our days.
Hey, I'm Amy Rasmussen. I'm a teacher by profession, a wife and mother by choice, an optimist by nature, and happy by design. Here at Moms, we believe the world is wide open to all of us and that we have unlimited potential. We're so glad you're here.
Something I want to celebrate today is that my week has gone a little bit differently than I thought it would. And I'm going out of town with my husband today for a couple days. And Monday and Tuesday, I kept starting with Sunday night. I even had written out my calendar, but Sunday night, I am filling things in. And then as I walk away from my calendar, I'm like, oh, my day's totally open Monday. And my day's totally open Tuesday. And then the reality is I actually did have a few things planned. I was able to roll with it and make things happen and not beat myself up and be frustrated about it. And what about you, Amy? What's something you can celebrate?
Well, I will celebrate something, but also just for our listeners, today's Tuesday. And so like sometimes you just have the weeks where you're like, wow, this week has not gone like I wanted. And it's only Tuesday, or not wanted, but just like you expected, or it's just an adventure already. And it's Tuesday. So that as you were talking, I'm like, yeah, and it's only Tuesday, Lorna. So many great adventures ahead. But
Yes,
your free
for
time is coming, the time you cleared, right?
Yes, it is.
So that's good. So my week is different than kind of my regular routines as well. I was out of town all day yesterday with 11 for doctor's appointments and stuff. And then I'm going to be out of town tomorrow to support some kids with some things in their music class or whatever. And as I was planning this week, I was trying to find how to still have kind of normalcy, I guess. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to bring all the to-do things that I could do in the car, because the visit yesterday also involves like 4 hours of driving to each direction, at least, maybe more like 5 hours of driving. And so often I'm like, okay, what can I be doing? But instead I wrote in my bullet journal for yesterday that the purpose of yesterday is to calmly support the person with whom I am going. So I have lots of waiting room time when we go on these visits. He doesn't, but I do. And so I still bring stuff to do. Sometimes he wants to talk in the car. Sometimes he doesn't. And so I still brought stuff to do, but to be able to just have a focus, I'm celebrating that my focus was, this is the purpose. And so if it feels like, okay, he's just doing his thing, I'm going to multitask while we're in the car, I will do that. And if it feels like, oh, this is a good time to chat, then I will. And if we have time for lunch, like sometimes we have time for lunch when we do these appointments, it's great. I'll enjoy it. And if we don't, and I'm in the waiting room, fine. Right. Anyway, so just that shift, as I was realizing that I was feeling kind of stressed about not having the time to do things given how the week is, because it's also parent teacher conferences. My kids also have a day off. It's also prom, and my son wants me to help with that. So it's just this crazy week. But for yesterday, at least, I just kind of wrote down, this is the purpose. And then it could inform my decisions as far as how I spent my time.
Awesome.
Happy with that.
I love that, because then really you are being a little more proactive with how you're letting the day go, right? And by being proactive, it also means you're being super flexible. So
Right.
Way to go. That's fun.
Right. And being proactive and being intentional. We hear being intentional a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like the intention I am setting for this week or this day or this month, whatever, is flexibility. Right? Like, it doesn't mean we're not being intentional, or the intention I'm setting for this time is rest and recreation, right? Like, and so just reminding ourselves that that is also part of being intentional.
Totally. Yeah. So good. So we are just kind of talking, or growth has been on our mind about how we're growing, maybe where we've come from, where we are now, maybe where we want to head. One for me, I have a vision board, and at the center of my vision board is the Savior with a woman. And that idea is what I want to be striving for, to be more like the Savior. And so that is part of where, like, I want to continue to be growing and being more like He is. And I think that sometimes it is a lot more than just the spiritual and the physical. Like, there's lots that entails. And I think it all works well together, right? We need all of it to help us become like a whole person. And Amy, what do you have about?
Lots of things. But just what I thought of as you said that is that you said you're striving. And I think just with this topic of growth, the idea that we're never really going to arrive. It's not that when you are 51 and a half years old, you'll be like, done, like here we are. And so often as we come up, especially on the birthdays that are the decades, 30, 40, 50, we're like, I have not arrived at wherever this weird arrival place is. And that's especially on my mind because I've been in Brene's Brown Gifts of Imperfection a little bit. And she says this: we never really arrive, but we certainly know that we're headed in the right direction. And I think it's just a really good thing to remember that growth has everything to do with the idea that I don't have to be worried about arriving. Goals are great because goals can help us arrive. But your picture of the Savior, it's not like there's going to be this arrival point. If you reach 100, then you'll arrive. But if you only reach 97 in this life, you won't arrive. And we can think about next life, but we can't do much about that. And that's aspirational, right? So you can bring it down to like your goals or your daily things. And I'm hoping you're going to talk about some of the things that aren't just spiritual, aren't just physical, but it's a whole bunch of things. And maybe you don't have to, that's fine. But that are getting you towards that image, right? And that feeling you want inside yourself, the thoughts you want to have going on in your head, how you're showing up in different situations. And that you're like, I am showing up every single day, just as Lorna, and I'm showing up as Amy, but I'm headed in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
That direction that I set for myself.
Yeah.
So that's what came to mind with your describing.
I think it is. I think for me, I have seen more growth emotionally over the last little while that I have really appreciated in myself. And I think a lot of it has come from coaching, from getting coached, and through my coaching certification program I went through a couple years ago. And then just living life and having experiences, right? And being able to try it out. I have really appreciated it. And even just yesterday, I had an experience where I was able to assess where I am emotionally. My husband came home for lunch, and there's been some major stress for him at our business. We own a mushroom farm. They're all like legal, edible mushrooms that we sell at grocery stores and restaurants.
Right. Like you used to sell at Walmart for a while. And I always got to be like, oh, look, this came from them. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that you have to clarify. Anyway.
Well, I have had a couple discussions that come up about people thinking that they're other, like, more, anyway, not medicinal.
For recreational use.
Yes. Thank you.
Which I guess you could recreate with the fungi that you have, but that's not the kind that you're talking about. Gotcha.
Yes, totally. So anyway, he came home at lunch yesterday, and he was unloading what was on his mind, just like very stressed out. Like, we've got to work on this. We're working on this. We're trying this, trying that. And he left, and I knew he felt super heavy. And in the past, I easily can take on that heaviness, and then I can sit in anxiety and worry. And it was just awesome to notice that I can still love him and support him and encourage him and listen, but I don't have to take on all that weight. And actually, if I don't take on that weight, I can show up better for him.
Yep.
And my family. And so it was just cool to notice that, yes, I can sit in the worry, and I do care about him, but I don't have to take all of that on. And so that was just a good thing for me to recognize yesterday, that I have grown. I've made some steps in letting Bart be Bart and take care of what he needs to take care of, and then letting me be me and take care of what I need to take care of, and then support each other, right?
And I think too, just with what you're saying, it doesn't mean that there's not empathy there. Empathy doesn't mean taking ownership of all of somebody else's stuff, right? That you can feel in the moment that you're with him and you're present. You can feel like, I can see how that's heavy. Yeah, that is hard, But then as he leaves to go and continue his day, which I'm assuming he wasn't like, here, I want to just dump this on you so you can carry it, right? He was just processing in a relationship. And so he's even happier knowing that he can do that with you. You can sit with him in the moments. But then when he gets up and goes off to continue, that you will get up and go off and continue. Because I think it's hard to share with someone if then it's like, oh, now that's weighing them down. Right. And so, yeah, it's just a beautiful thing. That's really, really cool. And I love that one of the things that I wrote down is like, how can we make our growth visible to ourselves? Because I think that's one of the tricky things as we're doing things, that we can't always see how we've grown. And you got to have this moment of like, in a different year, right? Previously, I think I would have done it this way. But there's lots of other times where it's like, am I just am I just still me? Because we are, right? We're still just who we are. And it's
Right.
really easy to have growth be invisible. But I think finding ways that work for each of us every so often to make the growth visible is a really healthy practice. And to just see like I have grown. And even when we find ourselves back in a place that we're like, am I really learning this again? Like again? But that's life. Like relearning things over and over again is life. I find, well, and I was just and I find though that I'm not exactly in the same place, right? It's like, okay, now I can look, and maybe that's where you're gonna go. I can look back and be like, okay, I have been here before. What did I do then? I can start by trying those things, or I have different tools or whatever, right? But the fact that we're in that spot of learning what seems to be the same thing again, I think we learn at a different level, or we learn just one more layer, and each of those help. And so not to sit in frustration even there, but just be like, okay, I guess it's time for me to learn about this again.
Yeah,
That's okay.
totally. Well, and so yeah, the rest of the day, yesterday, the second part of the day, I'm with my daughter. We were getting her prom dress fitted. They'd already done alterations. We traveled to the store. It takes like an hour and a half to get to the store to do the final fitting, make sure everything is good. And then, of course, drive home. But on the way up, she was a little bit tired and just seemed a little bit irritable, and I could kind of let it go. And then as we're in the shop, I'm realizing her irritability is rubbing off on me. And so I'm feeling a little more irritable, right? Yep. And so even noticing in that moment, like, I'm feeling a little bit agitated. And then I was able to just kind of like, all right, it's fine. And I expressed my concern. We've spent a lot of money on this dress. I want to make sure it looks great. Just so you're aware, that's why we're going through this. And then it was still up to me to decide how I wanted to handle it. And so I could let that go. It kind of lightened my own mood where I could just share with her, hey, this is where I'm coming from. This is why we're doing this. And then even after we got in the car, there was still a little bit of irritability from both of us. And I, in that moment, I remember thinking, I don't have to feel grumpiness. I can choose. So I had pulled over. I needed to look up something anyway. I pulled over. We just kind of took a minute, and then I could regroup and then move on and feel okay about the day. And in the past, I would have easily jumped into that hole with her and just been like fighting with her, kind of, whether verbally or just in my own mind, steaming about it and whatever. But I could have jumped right in and done that. But I was able to notice I was starting, yeah. And then I could let it go, notice it. And nope, this isn't actually how I want to handle it. And then course correct.
Yep. Well, and sometimes I think with growth, for me at least, it's like, I just want to get better at noticing sooner the time that I'm like, wait, I want to regroup, or wait, this is how I want to do this, or whatever, right? And not like I'm constantly being like, is this faster than the last time? Not like that. That's not helpful. Right. But just being able to notice like, oh, I think I really am going to a place like sooner when I realize I need a second, or I need to regroup, or this is not how I want to show up right here, or this is a tricky situation, or whatever it is, right? Yeah. That I'm trying to shorten the turnaround time.
Yes.
That's how I often talk about it. And again, I'm not constantly like grading myself. Did I shorten it that time? But that's more of a focus than like, why do I need a turnaround time? Because I think that gets to a point where we're expecting ourselves to show up perfectly in every situation all the time, which is not humanly possible. And right. So we just look at that turnaround time. This is interesting. I decided to look up a definition as we were talking about growth, and it is progressive development, which is awesome. And I keep thinking about how growth and learning are connected. And I looked up learning, and learning is knowledge or skill acquired by instruction or study. So a lot of times we talk about learning, like you've learned a ton since you talked about coaching, right? You've been learning all kinds of things, both when you went to life coach school and also now as you're coaching. But your growth is coming as you have your progressive development. And you have days like yesterday where there's a little bit of both. Right?
Yes.
And you see what, and for me, a lot of my learning has come from, I have discussions with people and I read a lot of different things, and then I think about it and I'm like, okay. And then I decide what I'm going to play with and what I'm going to apply. And then I'm like, did that work? Did it not? And it's not like such a structured process as that makes it sound, but I just have these ideas coming in and I'm making connections and giving them a try. And so I just love that idea that between learning, all you did with the life coach school, and growth, there is a difference. And that in growth, we're in that progressive development, and it's just an ongoing stage.
So good. Yeah, it's so true. And really that includes all facets of our life, right? The progressive learning. Anyway, I love it.
Right before we got on, Lorna said to me, like, oh, I went a lot with like emotional growth. And I was like, this is so fascinating. And I said, well, as opposed to what? And you said academic. I was like, that's a really interesting thing too. And I don't know that I went to just academic. Like now I will talk about how I've grown in my brain. But there are so many different ways to grow. Neither one of us went to the place of let's talk about our physical growth. Right. We're not talking about how our hair grows or our nails grow or how our weightlifting is going.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. How our weightlifting is going or whatever. Neither one of us is getting taller. Anyway, but we both went to kind of whole person growth. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about with that emotional part. And I think it is our brain and it is our heart and it is how they interface together. And it is how we show up. And so it's kind of like this, maybe it's soul growth. I don't know, right? Instead of physical growth, it's that soul growth. Because then we're also learning about, like, we've exercised together for years. And we've talked about the fact that it's not like we're amazing midlife Olympiads or something. We're not,
Mm-hmm.
And yet what has it done for us in the mental realm and the emotional realm and just all of that, just because we've continued the physical stuff. So it's interesting how it's all connected. When you put it all together, it can be soul growth. I'll tell you a couple other thoughts I had. Something else that came to mind with growth is just our seasons of growth, both seasons of growth and our stages of growth. So with stages, I was thinking there's that learning phase of acquiring information. And that's happening constantly. Like we're always taking information. So it's not like cut and dry, but just that we acquire information and we kind of process it and then we practice it. And we practice things and sometimes they go well and sometimes they don't go how we thought and whatever. And then there's times when we start pruning and we're like, okay, this is what I'm taking from that person. And this is what I'm taking from that book. And this is what I'm taking from like life coach school. And I just like that idea of the stages. So to be aware of the stages we're in. And then as far as seasons, some things that came to mind with seasons is that we have seasons of rest. We have dormant seasons. And it might feel like not much is happening there, but a lot can be happening there. But we're just kind of maintaining. We're kind of just like where we are. And then there's seasons of massive, massive growth. I know that there's times in my life where I'm like, all of a sudden, planning a menu regularly does not feel effortful. It feels effortless. And I can't really pinpoint what. And I know that before that, I went through seasons of kind of like meh, every night was like, I don't know what we're having for dinner. And there's seasons I went through like actively working on it. And then there's all of a sudden a time when I just feel like the switch has been flipped. And I'm like, this is easy now. And it's happened with multiple things. Like that's the one I can pinpoint right now. And it's a little weird. It's a little weird to be like, how is the switch just flipping now? And why didn't it before? And I think it's because there were seasons where I was taking in information and I was practicing whatever. And then there were seasons where I could actually see massive, massive growth. Like I could see myself trying new recipes. I could see myself trying an app or trying different ways to schedule or whatever. And then there were seasons of rest and dormancy. And somehow that whole thing together ended up that I could just take off. So I don't know. So just any thoughts about like those stages and the seasons that we go through?
I think that's a perfect example. And I think sometimes we get into that space of rest and we're almost like feeling guilty or beating ourselves up. Where sometimes that's what we need. Even for our physical bodies, we can't work out constantly. Our body needs time to rest. And so sometimes that is the process that we work really hard and then we have some space to rest. And that actually, and even sleep, that's when our body really can regenerate and heal and all of that, where we do need some space for sleep and for rest. I love that. I think that sometimes in that space of rest, sometimes that's a good time to just notice how we're feeling about things. Like, oh, this is really frustrating to me, or this is getting easier. I just think sometimes it can be a good place to assess how we're feeling about things. And then maybe that would help us know where we want to head when we're ready to head somewhere.
It makes me think of like using those rest times kind of as seasons of reflection.
Yeah.
But not only reflecting like, well, what did I get done? Not like that, but like, again, a full reflection. Like, how do I feel right now? How did I feel about that? Like, how do I want to feel? What am I thinking lately? Just what am I doing lately? Just the whole picture. Oh, with the seasons of rest too, I think another stage that we can go through is when things are really, really hard. Sometimes we wonder, why am I not progressing and growing right now? Just when life hits us, either when all of a sudden you're in the middle of multiple teenagers and that is crazy, or you have just like a brand new baby, right? And it's just like, I don't know if I'm ever getting out of the first 6 weeks or the first 6 months, or Or I don't know, so many new moms, not just brand new moms, but anytime you have a new baby, it can be like, how long is it supposed to take me until I get out of this funk and I figure out how to have a new baby? And I have a sister-in-law who has 7 kids, and my mother-in-law too had 8. So my mother-in-law has said, like, it seems like it took till at least 6 months every time before I kind of started feeling like I maybe had a handle on it. And she wasn't necessarily like, oh yeah, just everything was great by then. But the newness and the new routine had kind of settled a little bit. And now I can't remember what my sister-in-law has said, but I remember at one point I was like, well, it took 9 months for me to grow this baby. It's probably going to take at least 9 months for my body to recalibrate at least a little bit, just my body. But then if I'm like, yeah, but I'm still getting up at night with this child, or I'm still breastfeeding or whatever, it's like, actually, it could take 9 months after the time I finish breastfeeding, because that whole time is a different time. It's a different kind of growth, a different kind of what's going on. And it's just a time for really focused doing what you are doing. And then afterwards, then you can rest and you can grow. And it's not the growth's not happening there and the rest isn't happening. But I think I've heard, it's Gretchen Rubin again, but it's her sister, Elizabeth. And she says there are seasons of sacrifice. And just to recognize sometimes when we're in a season of sacrifice, and so we're not doing all the things and we're not seeing all kinds of personal growth that's really obvious to us, that's when it's nice to then later go back and reflect and be like, but I did learn this. I learned how to sit still, or I learned how to look into their eyes, or I learned how to do things one-handed. But that so often comes in hindsight.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and even using these experiences as a way to realize we are growing, right? Even though it doesn't feel like it. And I love the analogy of the little drops, putting little drops in a bucket. Like those are the things we're doing, and it feels like we're not making any progress at all. Yep. But at some point, most of the time, we can look back and be like, oh yeah, wow, that really did. I did grow. There was some improvement. I can see that really my bucket is not so empty anymore. There really are lots of drops that have equaled a good amount of water.
Yeah, and it just keeps happening. We just have to have faith, I think, in the little drops.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to have faith that the little stuff actually matters.
Totally. And it really does. I feel like now at this stage of life, and you feel the same way, I think, that we now can see all of those little things we did along the way and how important they really were. Where in the beginning, it felt so hard. And is it really worth it? And why are we doing this? And now we get to like kind of reap the rewards of having done a lot of those things as our kids were little.
Yep. Well, and I think now with teens and with young adults, and I'm almost into young adult phase too, but I think realizing like I can take a breath now and be like, this is a time for me to just put down the to-do list or whatever that I thought we needed to engage on and just say, how's it going? Right? Like, or I can see how just a little thing like going to someone's play lays a little bit of a foundation, or going to, my kids aren't even in plays. Why did I say that? Like a concert. That makes it sound like I have drama people in my family. I do not, but just going to those little things. And then sometimes not going to those different things, but then communicating, hey, I'm not going to be there today. Dad has a need today that I feel like I want to be there to support, or I have something scheduled, right? But just being able to, I don't know, figure it out a little bit better and balance it, because we've had all that experience of that foundation and those little things. It helps us figure out how to just kind of navigate, I guess, all those little things.
Yeah, it's good.
Good. I've got two more things. Yeah. And then you can just jump in. Another thought that I was having was about how we learn, whether it's emotional learning or academic learning or whatever. I often say like multiple exposures is a big deal for me. And so there are lots of things I remember really well, but I don't necessarily remember it after one exposure. And I don't know, Lorna, you might say something different. You might be like, yeah, you do. But I feel like it's multiple exposures that is really what helps me recall stuff. And so that multiple exposures for me is like, if I read something and then I talk about it, and then sometimes I go back and look at just what I underlined or whatever, for whatever reason, that really helps. And for you, it might be different.
Well, and I am going to say, you do have a great memory. So I do feel like
thank you.
Naturally you are already like, you absorb things well. But then, yes, I can see how for you is that you're talking about multiple exposures helps you. It absolutely helps me as well. And I don't feel like I have as great of a memory as you do. So I do need more of the exposure. Anyway, go
and so do I. Well, no, but I was just wondering if you've ever thought about how you learn. Like, do you have any thoughts on seeing either how you learn or how your kids learn and how it's different? And we talk about it academically, but I think it applies more to all of life.
Yeah. Well, I think I have come to realize I learn more through talking than I ever thought I did.
Yeah.
And really, probably because we spend so much time talking, you and I do, that I have realized there is so much value that comes as we share and hear other people's ideas and get input from each other and other people as well. And then as I watch other people that don't talk much, don't share much, and I just can see how sometimes really even there's lots of pain. And I think if they aren't willing to share it and talk through it with people that love them and can help them. Does that make sense? So I feel like there's lots of learning that comes from talking and sharing. And I'm not saying to be open about everything that, airing your dirty laundry or whatever,
Right.
but in that, finding someone or two people that you really can trust and share and talk to and work it out with people too.
Yeah. Well, and we found that there's different kinds of talking, right? We talk differently when we're running together in person than when we're running together on the phone, than when we're walking. And for a season, when we were in the same small town, we do our running, whatever, we talk that whole time. And then we would stop on this park corner. And I had another friend who we both know who was like, how long do you guys stand there talking? So like, it depends, and so it's just so interesting when we'd stop, right? And then sometimes even I would go home, and maybe I was more likely to do this than you, but we would both go home and I'd be like, the other thing we were talking about, now I think this, right? So I'm like in a different context, or I've now sat down and my body's still. So just interesting, the different thoughts that come and the processing and the talking in those different settings.
Yes.
Is fun.
So true.
One of the things with that too is I just thought about being able to play with the ideas that come our way. And I said to a friend once, like, I just like to play with this. And she said, that doesn't resonate with me at all. I can't just play with it. And I think it was because what we were talking about felt very important to her. But for me, and that's fine. But for me, one of the things that can be a barrier is if it's like so important to me that I can't play with ideas to try stuff, then I'm like in a straitjacket. So I'm like, it's okay. I'm going to be like a kid and I'm going to play with it and see what works and what doesn't work. And that's why it's play. It's not play because it's not important. It's play because I need the importance of play, just like kids need the importance of play. And it's important enough for me to play with it. So, and there, hopefully, those of you who are listening, you're going to find other things that you're like, for me, it's really this. If I'm moving when I'm learning, or if I'm listening to music or whatever, I hope you'll pinpoint some things. But I think we're going to say something, Lorna.
And just when we're willing to play, or at least I think sometimes when there's so much pressure, it makes it harder on us. Yeah. Where I think the idea of being willing to play with an idea or something that is important to you, sometimes it can help loosen it. So then you can have actually some more clarity and come up with some better solutions or things to do, how you want to handle it.
Yes. So I am in a moment of growth right this second. My morning changed and I just looked at the clock. So our wonderful listeners, I did have something else to say, but we are going to wrap up right here. I hope you're okay with that, Lorna. I'm 15 minutes late. And so, well, thank you so much for joining us in our journey of growth. I hope that you are growing, and I hope that they'll still take me at my appointment 15 minutes late. Have a good week.
Thanks. See you guys.
Thanks for coming to Meeting of the Moms. We hope it made your load a little lighter. We'd love to hear what's on your mind. Send your celebrations, takeaways, and suggestions for future topics to momswithamyandlorna@gmail.com.
If you enjoyed the show, please like, share, and subscribe. If this isn't the right fit for you, we wish you well on your journey. Until next time, I'm Amy Rasmussen.
And I'm Lorna Adams. See you next week at Moms.